Hey, what is up, guys? It is MetaGamesGX here, and we are going to be talking about Branded once again. I wanted to go at this with what we've been learning from top 32 YCS performance of Basilis with Branded very recently, and then also various regional tops of Branded. I want to take into account things that the OCG has been doing also, and just showing you guys really the way forward with Branded. This isn't going to be like really a formal deck profile, but I do want to use the deck profile as a base to really just talk about Branded, its place in the format still, and just discuss that more and really how Branded can be winning in this format. If you guys want to see a video on more in-depth, like how to beat Ryzeal with Branded, please leave a comment down below and like this video and let me know what was your favorite part of this video that we talked about. So this is going to be a 60 card build. I genuinely think that 60 cards is the way for Branded right now. You could be running it lower to the ground at 40, 45, and I think we saw Basilis' list, which was about 50 cards. We still haven't gotten the list, but it looked to be about 50 cards. I just think that as at the moment, the YuGiOh is going into so many grind games that I feel like you are going to actually have to build your Branded deck for the first time around grinding a bit more. This is really just the bog standard stuff. There's nothing really to talk about here. I like the one Quem, as I will always say, because it just helps out our going second. So one Quem is just fine, and then two Cartesia once again to prevent the bricking as well, but two is just great. They aren't starters, they're extenders. And so what is Branded's place in the format right now? How good is Branded into Ryzeal and Malice? I think if you've been running Branded for any time now, you will notice that there are probably two really huge factors standing in the middle of Branded right now. The first one is Malice. I think Malice is definitely the biggest factor preventing Branded from really doing as well as it probably should be right now. You know, all things considered, in Master Duel, it's still the second most represented deck in ranked top cut. So this deck should be doing a bit better than it is, I think, in the TCG, if it weren't for Malice. I think Malice really does stand in the way of Branded, because Malice isn't necessarily affected by... You need to have... If you don't hand trap Malice, you're in for a bad time. And Branded doesn't have the ability to, like, main deck that many hand traps. I mean, we do have the Malcharmy Fuwalos right here, which I highly recommend. I think we've seen it in most Branded builds that have been topping, whether it was Keza's list that got the top 8 at the Christchurch Regional recently, which was heavily inspired from my deck profile. He messaged me the night before. Shout out to my man Keza for taking it all the way, you know, bringing a few different tech changes here and there and still just bringing it home for Branded. And I think that Fuwalos was in this. You could also see in Basilis' live stream games from the top 32 Birmingham. So I think it's really just proven out that Fuwalos is the way. But these are the rest of the monsters. 26 monsters in this deck. And what am I doing to help myself against Malice and Ryzeal? Because to finish up on that idea, our Malice matchup isn't really that great, obviously. We know this. I think that maining the Fuwalos has been really helpful in that aspect. I also think that having board breakers in your deck that are good into Malice actually helps a lot too. I think Grass Looks Greener is one of the actual engine cards in your deck that can help break the Malice board. It does give a lot of advantage to help you play into it. And then also just the pure fact of super polymerization being incredible into the Malice matchup, because you're able to fuse off the Malice names and then also put them on. And then also things like Forbidden Droplet being quite good into like the White Binder, for instance. So that's what we're doing to combat Malice. I do have to say, though, the most of the meta right now is still Ryzeal. So you still have to prepare for mostly Ryzeal. I think you will play basically like, you know, 4-to-1 kind of like Ryzeal players to Malice players. So we're still running 3 Bestial Saronir. I think this has been good ever since the Fiendsmith came out and has been very standard in Branded. You know, the Saronir trades really well, targeting the Requiem in the TCG or on the Lacrima special summon in Master Duel, but also just providing yourself an extender because it sends a Branded spell or trap card to the graveyard, and you have plenty of ways to get, you know, make use of that. And we're also maining 3 High Spirit and then also 3 Allura Darkness. So having the extra darks is very huge because we're already running 3 Albion the Shrouded Dragon, because this card's just incredible amounts of consistency, and you need as much draw power as you can, I think, in a 60 card build. And that's what Saronir is, almost pseudo draw power, because it does thin your deck and it gets you to Branded Fusion. So if you see Saronir plus like Opening or even Forbidden Droplet, and then your other card in hand is like Fusion Duplication, so going first, that's still a playable hand, or going second, if you just have like an Aluber, you're off to, or like a Tragedy, you're off to the races. So I think this card is just, these cards are great in terms of just making your 60 card build be like, these are good going first and going second cards. So against, and these are just prime against Ryzeal in my opinion. Also just targeting the cross, you know, like baiting detaches. And then also I've debated on running Druid Swarm, but I'm also trying to max out on the consistency of this build. I'm also just trying to make sure, because I think that we can punch through a lot of the Ryzeal board with Engine. It's mainly just when they go uninterrupted, so having the 3 Bestials plus Magmut's huge. Druid Swarm would be nice though, so that is something you could consider in the future, but you always have to consider your bricks in a 60 card build. And then YuGiOh, this is something that I don't love main decking, and this is something that could actually go at some point. But this is our best Molcharmy line. A lot of people might like sigh when they see YuGiOh, but I do think YuGiOh is, at the end of the day, our best line into hand traps. Like if your opponent Molcharmies you, if your opponent double Molcharmies you, YuGiOh is your best line. The other line that you have if you don't have YuGiOh is basically hope that you have access to Cartesia and they didn't Perulia you, and then end on a Cartesia plus like a Rinbrum, and then you have stuff in hand, or like a Sanctifier. That requires a 2-card combo, and I'd much rather have a line that's a 1-card combo, so I'm able to, you know, and that is also one of the things where I can't always get to this through a 1-card combo, but you know, ending on the Sanctifier and then getting the Cartesia is way stronger under Fuwalos, which is our best Fuwalos line, right, if you have the YuGiOh in the deck, so that's why we're keeping it there. It is also a dark and a high spirits line, so it's, you know, it's a pseudo consistency kind of brick, but also this is a card that could definitely be in the side deck. I'm not huge on it. This is mainly to make room for the side deck, and, you know, we side it out going second every time. And but I think overall into hand traps, and YuGiOh's just very good. I think a lot of people just, Vice King is a step below this card. This card is actually just a step below Gimmick Puppet. This is almost Gimmick Puppet in my opinion. It can't be outed by tributing, so you can't like go Deception tribute it. You can't go Engraver or Bestial single tribute it. Like they have to have the droplet. So, or like a way to destroy already, which you can deal with most of the time with Branded. So I think you aren't ever going for this line unless you get Molcharmy. So that is something. And then once again, you side out going second. But I think something against Malice, like this is very needed against Malice. Also, if you aren't able to fully crack either the Malice or Ryzeal board, I think, you know, YuGiOh is able to, you know, especially with grass, you're already running grass. So if you're able to mill the YuGiOh already, and grass always gets you to Branded Fusion plus like Branded in red or Branded in white. So you're always getting lock plus the Light and Darkness Dragon Lord. If you, so this just increases your ceiling of your deck too when you resolve grass. And if you didn't know, in a grass build, in my opinion, you should always be searching out grass off the Triple Tactics Thrust going second, in my opinion. Like, there's very little scenarios where I'm not. Like Dark Ruler No More, evenly matched, would be a couple of them. Maybe Triple Tactics Talents if they have a bunch of cards in hand and I have a bunch of gas, so but like I need to play through the Ash kind of thing, or like Talents Take or something like that if there's a problematic Floodgate on the board monster. So I do think that's something to consider too. But also, to combat the Malice board, we are also running Tumor Courier. Now, why do I say Tumor Courier? So, once again, grind games between the Ryzeal and Malice decks, you need Tumor Courier, in my opinion. It will probably come up because I'm running the Allure of Darkness, right? So, Allure of Darkness is how you, in my opinion, make 60 card kind of just like work so well. Because if you're not running a card that says draw 2, I think in the 60 card build, without any other major, like super big consistency piece, like we don't have 3 Grass Looks Greener yet, you know, and we only have 1 Branded Fusion. So like, I think Allure helps really like adds to the consistency of the 60 card build, and it allows you to run the double Mercurier, which I just think is so strong in my opinion. Like being able to like draw this off of Allure, have one already banished, and not like because not having a Mercurier in rotation can really matter on your end boards, because a lot of the time if you want to layer your end boards properly, which Branded has like a high ability to play through a lot of hand traps. That's why I think it's a very good pick this format if you run the correct build, because you can play through like 2 to 3 hand traps with Branded on average, especially if you open like Thrust or something. So like the thing is that this really does help. Allure helps you break those boards too, and just like get to those pieces. So like having Mercurier on the layered engine, like not having to worry about like, oh, you used up your Mercurier because you banished it or something, or I had to send off a High Spirits to start my combo or something. Like having the second one is nice. It is a brick, but it makes Allure so much better because you're seeing it to banish it off. It just helps the math on that a lot more with the hyper geometric calculator. Like if you don't run the second Mercurier, like your chances of actually just seeing a way to plus off of Allure is a lot less. It is a little bit conflicty with Fuwalos, I will say that, but I think, you know, it's either we used to run Desires, right, guys? Like we used to run Allure and Desires in Branded. So like this is essentially my Desires nowadays. I don't have to banish my main deck, and this is actually something that will help me every time I see it. And even on top deck, it's not that bad against certain decks, because then you can chain it against them, especially against like White Forest or something like that. So, and it's also a High Spirits bridge, and that's also something I've also talked about, and we'll get to that when we get to that. But overall, I think having the ability to have Allure, because just seeing Allure or Fuwalos in your hand going second basically means I'm doing fine, right? Like I'm trying to up the consistency of the cards that I want to see going second, so that are also good going first, right? So like Fuwalos is just the god card, so I think like it's not great going first, but it's also a High Spirits bridge, so that's why we're running it, and it is mostly guaranteed to kneecap my opponent, and it's also a good option into our worst matchups. You know, if you don't run Fuwalos, what are you doing against Mermal? And in my opinion, Droll and Lockbird is a good alternative, but it is not as good as Fuwalos, just dead stop. So like, because a good Mermal player will just play through Droll, in my opinion, honestly. So like, I think Fuwalos is just like one of the only things that can actually stop stuff. Obviously, it's not great into Ryzeal, but at least it gives you a draw. And then once again, we'll stop their combo from going off. And that's really important against like the Fiendsmith version or Mitsurugi, right? I know Pure is very popular right now, but I think you have a very good matchup into Pure, because it's out the detonator plus cross mini game essentially against Pure. So, you know, having, which is very easy to do with any one board breaker, frankly. And the cross can be very annoying, but, you know, we'll talk about ways to get around that. So yeah, moral of the story is I think you do have to run these cards if you're running 60. If you're not running 60, you could probably cut the Allures and be like my man Keza and just run these. Or you could just run the Allures, but I do think Fuwalos is just better than Allure right now, because some hands you don't see a dark, but that's why I've worked on the ratios, and I think overall you're usually seeing a dark with it. All right, so now is really standard stuff: one Branded Fusion, one Branded in White, one Branded in Red. And I think Branded White is just crazy right now, because Chaos Star Source is just one of the best cards for Branded, and it makes Branded in White. Chaos Star Source makes Branded in White a board breaker, because especially when I think you have to run this if you're running Grass, because if you're not running this with Grass, your Grass gets a lot worse, since Grass just loads up the graveyard automatically for Branded White, where this is usually a turn 3 or 4 or 5 card. And that's also why it's good, this format, because obviously lots of grind games, like I said. So I think having that is really good, in my opinion. It is a brick going first when you don't see Grass, I won't lie, but like I still think like going second, if you draw 2 dragons, like if you draw a Shrouded plus Albaz, you have a way to draw also Interruption, then you can just go into this and then go Chaos Star Source, pop 2, and then play the game if you need to. So it's a way to help you play through the end board of Ryzeal and even Malice, because you get a pop 2, right? So like you can force the Malice traps, you can destroy whatever you need to on their board. Obviously, if they're ending on the Nightmare Griffin, obviously that's what we have to use our generic board breakers for, but that's what we have like Fuwalos and Allure of Darkness, so that we see those generic board breakers against Malice and Ryzeal. That is the key of this format. So that's why it's, in my opinion, you're either running a 60 card build or like a really low to the ground 40 card build where you see always Fuwalos plus like your super poly. I think there is room for that, but that build, in my opinion, is way too glass cannon-y, and you will lose past turn 3, and a lot of games are going past turn 3 right now. Branded is a deck that likes to close out the game before turn 3, and that's why I think also maining the Ido helps that a lot of the time, because people just are not expecting that anymore. And also, yes, there are Bestials, so that's why I'm saying, like, you don't always go for this. You only go for this under Mulcharmy, but I think that's just, it just makes everything better in your deck. Like I said, it makes your grass better, so yeah. One red is just fine, honestly. It would be either 2 red or 1 white, 1 red. I think 1 white is just way too good with grass. 3 opening, 3 high spirits. I think high spirits, yeah, I've said before, you don't run 3 high spirits, 3 allure. I do want to address that. I think overall, you kind of have to make concessions now with 1 branded fusion. They are still your best, allure, and the high spirits is still your best consistency pieces in the game, right? So, like, you are able to, like, obviously these two things conflict in a certain way where both want a dark to basically send to the graveyard or banish to, like, get your advantage off of the card. But when you're able to see one of these cards, I think this is mandatory at 3 because you need it to unbrick your hands with Bestials. You can't run a high Bestial build in this game or a TCG because there's no Verte without running these cards, in my opinion. And I think there's a lot of value in running the Bestials right now. Like, I wish I was running 3 Lubellion right now. That's also something I could consider in this build. But I do think that when I see Sarni or Albaz, those cards literally kill you seeing them, like, going first. So, and sometimes going second. So these cards help you make your bricks that you have to run in your deck to compete in this format way better. And this is basically an engine Nadir Servant. It resolves Branded Fusion. It helps you insulate your board through Branded Fusion. That's why a lot of the time I always say if you have a Luber plus a Dragon, you always search for high spirits. And that's why Kit is mandatory, because you can't insulate your line elsewise, because then you can go high spirits, send the Albion. If they ash your Branded Fusion that you get off the kit, whatever, you have Albion in graveyard, and then you probably have Albaz that you just sent off of this, and then you can set a Brandon red, and then you're still making Mirror Jade, right? Plus stuff. So it's still, this is just a way to get to Branded Fusion and make sure you don't die to Ash. I see a lot of people just misusing this card even to this day, so maybe I have to make a guide on high spirits, honestly, or just insulating your lines in Branded. So if you guys want to see that, make sure to leave a like down below. And once again, Allure is just crazy right now. It's how I'm able to see some of the cards that we're going into. 1 Lost, 1 Retribution, 1 Banishment. Banishment's such a brick, but it is such a good game in the grind game, or card in the grind game. A lot of people are running nib, so, like, they'll just nib your board, and, like, Banishment's just like, okay, you did nothing to my board. It also helps you make Lad off of 1 card of Luber, and since you're running 60, a lot of the time you're seeing 1 card of Luber. This card does get sided out every single game going second. Every single game. You do not want to see it. Same with, like, 2 high spirits. Like, we'll talk about side patterns maybe at the end. But yeah, no, I think Banishment is just kind of broken. You can make Lad without Banishment, and I've been testing without it, but, like, I'm not running 2 red, so I'm not... I would have to run 2 red if I wasn't running. Like, I could cut the white, cut the Banishment, and run 2 red. I think I could do that, but overall, this card's just really good and helps your lines in a 60 card build. I could see, like, a 40 card build or something, 45 card, not running this card, because you're probably seeing Cartesia plus a Luber in those hands a lot of the time. So, also thought about blazing Branded King, but once again, I think you're just having, like, I've always talked about this, you have to make sure you're not bricking, especially in 60 card, because you can, like, really fuck up your deck building very easily. We're running the 3 Nadir Servant to go along with the Dogmatika Maximus for the Nadir package. So there are so many hand traps in this current format. Like, the best decks, whether it's like Malice or Ryzeal, they're running 20 plus hand traps. So, like, these cards really do need to be in your deck, in my opinion, whether it's in the main or side. Obviously, it's not something, I mean, it's not mandatory, but, like, there is no other card in the game that just resolves Branded Fusion for you like this, like these cards. It also helps you insulate your line through stuff like Nibiru, because you can float into this off of the Maxim or off the Grand Guignol. And this also makes Garura a better card in your deck. Gets you draw advantage if you only see Nadir, once again, in a 60 card build where you're not guaranteed to open up your 1 card starters. This becomes a 1 card starter, right? It's not good going second, but allows you to have really clean going second side patterns. It's really not good into Ryzeal. If you see this against Ryzeal going second game 1, you are probably crying. But I think it's necessary with how many hand traps there are, because elsewise, I'm not even running Book of Eclipse. I think if I was running Book of Eclipse, I'd be able to not run these, but I think also Book of Eclipse isn't a starter, so that's why I'm running this over Book of Eclipse. And then I'm just conceding that I'm going to have a little bit worse of a time going second, but my going first will be just fine. Definitely some cards I could consider cutting, though. Once again, I've debated for the Book of Eclipse. It's just the ratios weren't working for me, not running it. So if they are for you, let me know. 3 fusion deployment. This is actually kind of a weak card right now, I think, because of the amount of Fuwalos in the game. So like if you get like chain Fuwalos on this, you basically like it's very tough not to give them like 2 or 3 draws. So this card is kind of weak. I could see why people would cut down on it right now. So, but it's 60 cards, and I always want to see this to dodge Imperm on my Aluber, so. And also sometimes now Cartesia is a board breaker because of Chaos Star Source, so, you know, this is something where I could go into Cartesia, then make Chaos Star Source by, like, fusing off with certain things, or, like, throughout my combo. So I do think, you know, I always want to go through Cartesia to insulate my line, so this is still a very useful card in that aspect. I think the issue is when Malice isn't even, like, running that many hand traps, they're running so many Bestials, so, like, obviously, like, Nadir's worse into that situation, but you are able to play around Bestials pretty well. Like, Shifter is also annoying, so that's why, like, you have to be careful about certain things. Like, there's the Shifter, Dweller in the format. Not every Malice player is on Shifter, and not everyone's going to be ending on blind making Dweller their game ones, so it is something where you're just making some concessions so that you have more on average a better time, because I'd rather not be losing my game ones, like going first especially. And I think Branded already has very easy time board breaking in engines, so I think that's these are cards that we can kind of just end up running even though they aren't the best going second. And once again, like Ido is kind of in the same boat. Like this could probably just honestly be something else, but all right, 1 Gold Sark, 1 Foolish, 1 Grass. Grass is just too crazy right now. If this card resolves, you win the game, so that's kind of where we're at with that. 1 Called By. These are 1 card starters, so we run them in 60. 3 Thrust, 1 Talents, and then 3 Super Poly. This should be a Super Poly, by the way. So I moved my 3rd one. I need to get a new one. But yeah, no, Super Poly is just like way too good right now. You kind of make it with like Quertus, obviously, but then you also have the Proskinion, and then also against Blue Eyes. Like, Blue Eyes is just the buy. We haven't even mentioned Blue Eyes because you guys know, like, Super Poly, make Chaos Star Source, blow up 2 cards on their board. It's way too crazy right now. Way too crazy. And you should never go to game 3 against Blue Eyes, I think, with Brandon. Like, that's just, like, between that and Alba Lenatus for sure. So this is my board breaker package. I was maining 3 Droplet, but once again, I just don't have enough 1 card starters in 60 to like justify running 6 board breakers on top of the Thrust package. Like, I'd have to cut the Thrust package in my opinion, or something like that, if I wanted to run like Book of Eclipse or like Droplet. So I'm siding Droplet because we need it against Dweller, but I don't think you auto lose to Dweller, so that's just stuff that we're gonna have to consider. So yeah, I still think Super Poly is the best board breaker right now because it's great against Blue Eyes. It's pretty good against Ryzeal because you get to make things like Quertus or just a Mirror Jade or Proskinion steal the detonator. Goes super hard right now. So yeah, that's what we're running right now. And then also 1 Blackout Laughs. I know I'm using proxies right now. I just don't have them on me. 1 Blackout Laughs because Blackout is very solid right now. You can call Detonator, you can call White Binder, you can do a lot of things with it, and it's also good discard fodder. Also is a great mill off of grass, so that's what we're doing with that. And then I really wanted to talk about the extra deck super quickly, not too much to say. Like I said, 1 Chaos Star Source. This card's like the most important card in Branded right now, in my opinion. I'm making this card more often than not. It's also a great bridge into Lad. I see a lot of people not running this in the OCG. I don't understand why. It makes cards like Borreload Savage Dragon just way better because you can like end on a board of a lot of the time through Shifter or whatever of Lubellion plus Cartesia, and then, or sorry, so you go like wherever you're under Shifter and you have Cartesia access, so you make Lubellion with like Shrouded, you make the Boral, and then you have a pop, and then after the pop is done, you can go Cartesia on your opponent's turn, make Lad. So that's like a very easy way to like play through hand traps and still have like 5 interruptions, including 3 Omni Negates. So that if you guys want to see that combo in like a new guide, I do have it on my spreadsheet, but if you guys want to see it in a video again, I can redo it in the next video. So that's why we're running that. 1 Proskinion, we need it for the Super Poly target. 1 Quertus for the Super Poly target. Also, it's great in a grind game. You need this to OTK, so like, this is like something you just cannot cut. This is how you OTK against Malice, since they're all in attack position, so you can make Quertus very easily, especially off a Grand Guignol just for free. since Grand Guignol can banish itself to summon Quertus. Also Perskinion, once I said. Once again, you can suck up a Murakamo plus a Detonator if you go normal summon a Luber, especially if they go like Pop It, or if they go Imperm or Veiler, then you just super poly, make Perskinion, steal their Detonator, get a free pop, very broken. And then also Quertus, once again, just staple, one Grand Guignol. I wish I could run two, it's just way too tight of an extra deck. Like, you guys are going to see I have a lot of concessions in this extra deck. Not one Albion, two Albion, and the only two of in the extra deck, and then one Rinbrum, one Mirror Jade. I wish I could run two. That's something I'm going to have to change in the future. So we'll find room, but I think having a utility extra deck is super important right now. But it really does cut off some lines only having one Mirror Jade, so in the future I might just end up cutting Aquaritis. In the future I might just end up having to cut the Boral or maybe Proskinion, but because Proskinion at the end of the day is really, I mean, it's still really good though, so I can't imagine myself like cutting it in the current format. It's just really tight at the moment. Maybe siding some, like the second Jade genuinely, and just like taking out something, but one Titanclad, one Albalinatus, and then one Sanctifier. It would probably be just like siding the Albalinatus, because you don't really need this right now except for against Blue Eyes. And I think your Blue Eyes matchup is already quite good, so this could potentially just be a second Jade right there. And then one Garura, we're running that because it's the super poly target. Also, you can send it off of the Nadir to draw a card, so you're always gaining advantage and helping to go through your 60 card deck. So yeah, guys, and then the side deck, 2xyz Encore, I still think you need to end up running it with the 3 droplets, just so you don't auto-lose to Dweller a lot of the time. You won't always lose to Dweller, but I think having this plus, like, the Chummies is going to be very strong. And then speaking of Chummies, you have 3 Meowls. I think Meowls is very good against the Fiendsmith variant too. It's very good against the Mitsurugi variant. It's good against Malice, obviously. It's very good against Mermail, too. Like, it at least gives you, like, 2 to 3 draws against Mermail, which is all you're asking for, to not just, like, get hand-ripped to death. So I think this is why I'm settling on Meowls over, like, Perulia. And it's a good top deck, too. So that's why I think in 60 it's just fine to side it. 3 Lancia for the Malice matchup, and then 3 Uka, and then 1 Ecclesia. So you guys know and love Uka. This card is incredible against Fiendsmith. It's incredible against Blue Eyes. You can summon this against Blue Eyes when they summon a Blue Eyes from deck, and then summon Uka, and then just make a Mirror Jade, and then make a Chaos Star Source, blow up their True Light, and they're win the game. We're only running the light target because I'm only siding this against Ryzeal, and I'm only siding this against Blue Eyes, but that covers what I need to. I have all my side patterns figured out. I side in these 9 versus Malice, which is a lot of, this is a lot of sides against Malice. I'm going to probably see stuff with my Fuwalos, especially I'll at least see the Super Poly. And then against Ryzeal, I'm siding in the 3 Uka, 2 Xyz Encore, plus 3 Droplet. So I have, once again, 9 side patterns against the Ryzeal variants. So very clean side patterns in that case. I was running Lightning Storms, but once again, I think when I'm running Albalinatus, I think, especially Chaos Star Source, like, I'm always just Chaos Star Sourcing their True Light, essentially, so, I'm not really quite worried about having, the Lightning Storms, and especially since I'm already running 3 Bestials, a lot of the time I'm gonna have a body on board, or Uka, so, like, Lightning Storm ends up conflicting in that case. So I could see myself, like, running a 1 of Feather Duster over, like, maybe, like, a 3rd Meowls, so that's something to consider. But yeah, guys, this was another yapping about Branded. I do want to show you guys what we'll be doing into like Ryzeal and Malice boards. Like, I'll literally take out the cards and show you guys, like, test hands of, like, what could break the board and stuff like that. That's very interesting to me. How do you guys like this kind of loose deck profile? It's really just talking about Malice and Ryzeal. So, like, to answer my question at the beginning, I think Branded is still wonderful into this format because your Ryzeal matchup's very good. I think outside of Detonator, if you only draw Albaz, like, I think Detonator is really tough to play around, but if not, it's like Destruction doesn't really matter against your deck too much. Obviously that's also why Cartesia isn't the best into Detonator, but also helps you dodge the Imperm, so I do think it's very important against that deck anyways, and then also it can be very good into, like, making the Chaos Star Source with your extra dragons with your draw power, so, I think it's just like having the options for Malice, like the main deck Super Poly. I think Droplet's very good too, and then just having the gas to play through their board is pretty good. Between, like, the Allure and then the grass looks greener, right? Like, Thrust will get you there, then you can go into Brandon White, and then you get the branded fusion access, and then you're able to kind of layer through their board, especially if you have like things like Albaz or other, or just generic like non-engine, and then also just like figuring out a game plan for Malice going second, and then also a plan for Ryzeal for the Abyss Dwellers and stuff like that. Droll and Lockbird's another card you can consider, but I think the Fuwalos plus the Meowls does just enough. Like, right, like Meowls is good against Crystron, it's fine against all the decks that you would want Droll against, basically, so I think this is just fine. And Droll just doesn't pair well into Malice at all, so that's why I did not want to run it. So yeah, and it makes for really clean side patterns and stuff like that. What do you guys think? How has Branded been treating you guys? Are you guys enjoying the Blue Eyes Branded format? What do you guys want to see on the ban list? Let me know all that down below. We will talk about more Branded coming up. I'm going to be doing that show-off video right after this also on what you guys should be doing. Check out my live streams every Monday and Friday. Make sure you're subscribed. MetaGamesGX signing out. Peace out.